But they are entirely rational based on the districts they represent. They are in safe, red, deep red districts. And as you're saying, they're not going to get primaried by the leader of the party, so they're safe to be the spoilers. That's the problem.
I think
it's the incentive structure that's the problem.
And they don't really care about the health, John, of the overall Republican Party. They don't wake up in the morning thinking, we need a strong party. They don't. That's not.
They should care more about the health of the Republicans.
Jake, here we are.
There we are.
Here we are.
All right, there you go.
Oh.
Congratulations.
So that is it. He has reached
the speaker.
He has reached the margin, the 215 margin, with 5 members voting present. The threshold goes down from 218 to 215. And we have there Kevin McCarthy, Congressman Kevin McCarthy, the Republican first elected to the House of Representatives in 2006. He has been serving as a leader since then. He wins on the 15th ballot, becoming the 55th person to serve as Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives. 15 ballots. This is the longest process in 164 years, and the only time that it has lasted this long since the U.S. Civil War. McCarthy won ugly. He won by making concession after concession. He won in a process that was at times chaotic and angry and once almost downright violent. But the key word in this sentence is the word won. Kevin McCarthy won. He is now the Speaker of the House. It is history. It is maybe history for the wrong reasons for some folks, but it is history, Dana Beth.
It is. And, one of his allies was texting me as it was going back and forth, and we saw the drama. And this person just said, keep your eye on the ball for him. And the ball is winning. And the ball is this moment. And the ball is becoming Speaker of the House. And the roller coaster obviously was quite tumultuous tonight. But think about the journey that he took and that he put himself on, particularly through the Trump years, in order to get to this moment.
Indeed. And, I think the other thing I'm flashing back to is what Kevin McCarthy has been saying to reporters, which is it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Frankly, the night is finishing the way that they expected, but it did not go the way that they expected when they walked on.
That's his family.
To the House floor tonight.
Can I just say once more, this
McCarthy.
is 2 years since January 6th and what was going on in the House that day, and how many of these members were election deniers or voted to stop the peaceful transfer of power.
Including the Speaker of the House, the new Speaker of the House.
Call the names of the members-elect who did not answer the first call of the roll.
I think they were waiting I think there was one Democrat that was out.
Vicente Gonzalez. Jeffries.
That's 212 for Jeffries, and we're still waiting for Rosendale.
Rosendale. Present.
There it is, present. So 6 present votes. All 6 of the rebels, the final holdouts, voted present, which lowered the threshold necessary for McCarthy. He didn't have to win. 218, 216 was just fine.
From a tactical perspective, this night is a huge victory for Kevin McCarthy. He had a strategy of grind it out, a strategy of divide and conquer, and ultimately that worked. I think now, even at this hour, it is important to look at the long term. The bigger picture here is that he is perhaps going to be the weakest speaker in modern history, beholden to a very, very, very small portion of his conference, a group of people who, as we saw tonight, he can't even really trust. So it's I think, a bittersweet moment for him, because I think they're going to be, as everyone wakes up tomorrow morning, what is this speakership going to look like? What is this majority going to look like? And what is the country going to be going through over the next few months as they have to govern?
And what did he promise them? We still don't know what the concessions were. What was Matt Gaetz promised in the end? And for his vote as well. We're going to be finding this out, not just in weeks, but down the road, what he promised them.
We were told at the beginning of the night that the vote on the rules package would proceed after the vote on the speakership. This was at a time that we thought it was only going to go to 14 ballots and was going to conclude an hour or so ago and without anybody almost punching Matt Gaetz in the face. But we are here now, and I think we're being told that the rules package will be voted on Monday and not today. Is that right, Dana?
We believe so. I don't think it's definitely decided yet. But before that happens, we haven't seen Kevin McCarthy actually get the gavel.
Right.
We haven't seen the members of Congress actually sworn in.
Right.
We've been here and we've been watching these series of 15 votes, including by members-elect, but they are still members-elect even at this moment. They have not been sworn in to officially become members of the House of Representatives.
Yeah. So there is still the official vote to be counted, to be called by the readers and by the clerk. And then, of course, the official swearing in of this Congress, after which we anticipate, although the good money's on not making any bets these days, we anticipate that there will be a motion to adjourn. John?
We may first hear, though, from Speaker McCarthy and the Democratic leader, Hakeem Jeffries.
Yes, I anticipate that as well. We did see Speaker McCarthy mouth the word finally just a few minutes ago. But America is about to hear a lot more from this man who is now third in line to the presidency. Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Oh, my.
I mean, it was one of those members that was
kicked off committees. Kicked off her committees not long ago because of violent rhetoric that she had used against members of Congress, including Nancy Pelosi, and all sorts of things she had said that were anti-Semitic and racist and on and on. She is going to be a star
now
in the McCarthy reign, having stood by his side during the entire time, even while her fellow MAGA caucus members caused lots of problems for him.
Well, she's a prime example of what we've seen happen this week. He has offered concessions, and people have given them their votes. He offered her a place on the Oversight Committee. She supported him through and through this. But I was going to say, she was also one of the liaisons helping facilitate the calls between former President Trump and members as that chaos was breaking out on the floor about half an hour ago.
Well, and the relationship, too, between them is also, the side effect, one of the side effects of that picture that McCarthy went down and took with Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago. I mean, we were talking about in which order or who was helped the most by what unfolded that day.
But obviously, in their tallies that the total number of votes cast is 428, of which the Honorable Kevin McCarthy of the state of California has received 216. The Honorable Hakeem Jeffries of the state of New York has received 212. With 6 recorded as present. Therefore, the Honorable Kevin McCarthy of the state of California, having received a majority of the votes cast, is duly elected Speaker of the House of Representatives. The clerk appoints the following committee to escort the Speaker-elect to the chair. The gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Scalise. The gentleman from New York, Mr. Jeffries. The gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Emmer. The gentlewoman from Massachusetts, Ms. Clark. The gentlewoman from New York, Ms. Stefanik. The gentleman from California, Mr. Aguilar. The gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Johnson. The gentleman from California, Mr. Liu. The gentlewoman from Michigan, Mrs. McClain. The gentlewoman from Washington, Ms. Delbini. The gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Hudson. The gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Clyburn. The gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Palmer. The gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Neguse. The gentlewoman from Oklahoma, Mrs. Bice. The gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Escobar. The gentlewoman from Indiana, Mrs. Houshing. The gentlewoman from Illinois, Ms. Underwood. The gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Cole. The gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Phillips. The gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. McHenry. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Kildee. The gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Perry. The gentlewoman from California, Ms. Barbara Lee. The gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Graves. The gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Wasserman Schultz. The gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Hill. The gentleman from Rhode Island, Mr. Cicilline. The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Roy. The gentlewoman from Virginia, Ms. Spanberger. The gentleman from Florida, Mr. Donalds. The gentlewoman from California, Ms. Jacobs. The gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Bishop. The gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Crockett. And the members of the California delegation, Ms. Pelosi, Ms. Waters, Mr. Calvert, Ms. Eshoo, Ms. Lofgren, Mr. Sherman, Mrs. Napolitano, Mr. Thompson, Mr. Schiff, Ms. Sanchez, Mr. Issa, Mr. Costa, Ms. Matsui, Mr. McClintock, Ms. Chu, Mr. Garamendi, Mr. Berra, Ms. Bronley, Mr. Cardenas, Mr. Hoffman, Mr. Lamalfa, Mr. Peters, Mr. Ruiz, Mr. Swalwell, Mr. Takano, Mr. Vargas, Mr. DeSagne, Mr. Torres, Mrs. Torres, Mr. Valadeo, Ms. Barragan, Mr. Carbajal, Mr. Correa, Mr. Khanna, Mr. Panetta, Mr. Gomez, Mr. Harder, Mr. Levin, Ms. Porter, Mr. Mike Garcia, Mrs. Kim, Mr. Obanoti, Mrs. Steele, Mr. Dewar, Mr. Robert Garcia, Mr. Kamlega Dove, Mr. Keeley, Mr. Mullen. The committee will retire from the chamber to escort the Speaker-elect to the chair.
One more thing left to do, and that's when you go through that door, you just gavel, you don't say anything. And it's like, I would know that's after midnight.
You mean the phone, the DT phone?
So we're, the clerk just listed the names of the California delegation. Kevin McCarthy is from the delegation. And we are now expecting some of the formal procedures to go on. I saw one of the members of the California delegation, Congresswoman Katie Porter, sitting in the audience reading a book called The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F.
Another member of the California delegation by the name of Nancy Pelosi was walking by. That's going to be interesting. Although, you know, traditionally we have seen this moment. The leader of the opposition party gives the gavel.
Well, and they called Hakeem Jeffries and other leaders as well to be part of this.
Right. And, Manu Raju was reporting earlier that is going to be Hakeem Jeffries, obviously, because he is the leader now, and it won't be
Pelosi.
It won't be Pelosi. She's no longer the leader. I mean, some of those moments are kind of iconic. John Boehner crying when he gave her the gavel, and vice versa.
Well, and that's actually such an interesting point because they're historically, and we've talked so much about this, but this is a small club, right, of people who've gotten a chance to be the Speaker of the House. And in the past, there has been some reverence. There have been, relationships built between people who have served on, from different parties. I mean, George W. Bush, famously complimented Nancy Pelosi's grit as becoming the first woman Speaker of the House when that unfolded. Those moments are almost entirely gone from Washington now, which I think is going to be it's going to be interesting to watch how this actually unfolds and how the relationships seem to be, because, quite frankly, the events of January 6th, in particular, in the House of Representatives, really broke down the trust. We've talked a lot about trust inside the Republican Party, but there have been metal detectors outside of the House of Representatives because they're concerned about death threats, et cetera. So, this is a very different, you talk about these symbolic moments where there's emotion and, feeling and they're human moments, right? There's a lot less of that in Washington these days.
Well, I think a lot of the Democrats hold a lot of the people across the aisle responsible for the attack on the Capitol, not least of whom is the new Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, who participated in Donald Trump's lies and signed on to that crazy lawsuit trying to disenfranchise 5 or 6 states. And even after blood was shed 2 years ago today, including the blood of Officer Brian Sicknick, voted to disenfranchise the voters of Pennsylvania and Arizona based on those lies. And what they have witnessed is Kevin McCarthy not turning the page, but continuing to capitulate. We still don't know what Scott Perry, who was one of the people who was part of the plot to undermine the democracy, what he got from this negotiation.
They continued to just whitewash, try to have amnesia, pick your term for it, deny what happened that day. They just don't want to acknowledge what happened that day.
Do you know how many Republicans went to the floor of the stairs of the Capitol this morning? You know how many House Republicans? One. Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick, one. Maharaja, we're told you have some news.
Yeah, that's right. McCarthy giving reaction about some of the chaos on the House floor to our colleagues Ted Barrett and Kit Marr. He came off the floor and he said, quote, "I am glad it's over." Now, he also denied he offered Matt Gaetz a chairmanship of a subcommittee in exchange for that vote of president, and said it would be up to the steering committee, which is the committee that he is involved with, that essentially selects committee members to get those key committee assignments. He said it would be up to that steering committee to give such a committee assignment to Matt Gaetz. He said did not promise that to Matt Gaetz. He said, quote, "No one is promised anything." And he said, whatever happens in steering. So he said he was happy it's over, and he denied making this offer to Matt Gaetz. We'll hopefully learn more about all the chaos on the floor. He is expected to talk to the press after this speech on the floor, where he formally accepts the Speaker's gavel. But here, making clear he did not offer any sort of quid pro quo on the Speaker's gavel itself, or on the subcommittee gavel itself with Matt Gaetz, but also indicating he's relieved this is all coming to an end.
Yeah, I would note, and this is just from observation, not from any reporting, but it did look, though, as though after Gaetz and McCarthy had made whatever conversation they'd made, whatever arrangement, whatever denouement had happened, where McCarthy ran to the front and tried to change his vote so there would not be a motion to adjourn, so they could go on and have this 15th vote. It did look to me as though Kevin McCarthy actually waited until Matt Gaetz actually cast his vote against adjournment before he cast his. And if I read that correctly, that would suggest he wanted to make sure Matt Gaetz went through with what he said he was going to do.
It's also quite possible that Kevin McCarthy did not promise Matt Gaetz anything, because he has let, for most of it, we saw the remarkable moments on the floor when he got directly involved himself tonight, but for most of the last several days, so that his fingerprints are not on some of these deals, and because he's not trusted by the rebels as well, he has let his deputies make the promises and cut deals and do the winks and nods. So
Congresswoman Victoria Spartz, Republican of Indiana, having a late night giggle with one of her colleagues. People have been working very hard and up very late all week.
Remarkable, they all voted president and no one voted against Kevin McCarthy in the final vote after what we've seen play out for those rounds and how that has all gone.
Given the fact that it was so important to them to cast votes for Andy Biggs, even in the 14th ballot.
And Kevin Hearn.
Right.
And not Kevin McCarthy, which is how Matt Rosendale did it before he voted president eventually. There will be questions about Trump's influence on this, given he was making those last-minute phone calls. Of course, he didn't have a ton of influence throughout the week. That's why it's stretched into, here we are at 12:49 on Saturday, January 7th. And I do think it speaks to how they all voted president in the end, though.
You want to tell everybody who that is, Caitlin?
He's about to get sworn in and be an actual member of Congress. George Santos has
George
been
Santos, who lied about
the headlines
literally
quite a
everything
bit.
on his resume.
Well, now Congressman-elect will be on there, and I guess we all know that's true.
Having the time.
Whatever the truth is about how much Trump's involvement mattered, the man he calls my Kevin will be Speaker of the House.
Second in line to the
he will
presidency.
have won the speakership 2 years to the day. We're in January 7th by the clock in Washington D.C. But the proceedings on January 6th, when they came back, also carried into the early morning hours of January 7th. So the historical, I'm going to use the term irony. There's a better term for it. I don't know what it is, but
history rhymes.
And in 2015, the last time he was supposed to be Speaker of the House, he lost the confidence of the Republican conference by seeming to admit, that the reason that the Congress had had so many hearings on Benghazi, on that crisis and that tragedy, was to bring down Hillary Clinton's approval ratings, was to ruin her political reputation. Now he has control of the U.S. House with Donald Trump running for president against the current president, and Kevin McCarthy and the Oversight Committee are going to be holding the Biden administration to account. Certainly that is absolutely appropriate. That's what Congress is supposed to do. One wonders, will there be excesses?
Well, to answer that question, we can just look at one of the concessions that Chip Roy, who was one of the 20, Republican from Texas, said publicly that Kevin McCarthy gave, which is a separate budget for investigations, specifically of DOJ and the FBI. Now, again, like you were saying, oversight is the constitutional duty of the United States Congress. But the fact that one of the demands of this group was more money, more taxpayer dollars, specifically to target those two parts of the administration, is rather telling. And
when several sitting members of the House Republican Conference are under investigation by the Justice Department, they now want to investigate.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I have heard from establishment Republicans very, very concerned that whatever this committee will be a vehicle, if it's abused, to obstruct justice. Not just to investigate the Justice Department, but to stop them from carrying out their duty, investigating anyone anyone in the House of Representatives who may have broken the law.
I mean, I think that while there's a lot of legitimate things that this Republican Congress wants to look into, how money is spent, waste, fraud, and abuse, et cetera, there's no question that there is a clear political objective to a lot of the things that this small contingent of, let's say, 5 or 6 want. One of them is this committee that my understanding is that the budget issue, they wanted it to be basically commiserate with what the January 6th committee had. And think about that. I mean, I think a lot of the concern in this group about the DOJ and about the FBI is frankly based on conspiracy, and it's based on stuff that is floating around on the internet, much of which has no basis in fact. And it's coming at a time when many of them are under investigation. And the aim here is to put it on par with the January 6th committee investigation, which was an investigation into an attempted coup, an insurrection on the Capitol. And then there's all the other stuff, the Hunter Biden stuff, the attempts to investigate the President Biden himself, which is not something that they can't do, but the premise of some of these things is not on solid ground. But all of that is going to be, available for them to do. Kevin McCarthy has basically said, go for it.
Yeah.
And they'll do it.
And but one thing, when I talked to Biden officials about this, because they've been staffing up for this for months, because they thought it was going to be a much bigger majority, is they did raise the question at times of, are these going to be well-coordinated investigations? Are they going to come off as legitimate? I think the week that we've seen play out does not lend a ton of credibility to that. We'll see how they're actually conducted by the chairman. Jamie Comer, we've been listening to him talk during this week. We'll see how they actually look when they play out. I think this is one thing that makes the White House feel a little bit better about the preparation they've done for this, but we'll see how they actually play out.
I don't know. If I were the White House, I would feel less good about it, because it's pretty clear.
Gloves are off.
Well, not only the gloves are off, but the people who are allowed to use, the people who have the power are those who have absolutely no qualms about doing things that are not within the bounds of any law, any process, any procedure.
And they can still
The inmates are running the asylum.
Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah, and I think it's important to also remember, big picture, that this is all going to be playing out against the backdrop of a presidential campaign, which is just going to crank up the emotion, the heat, the rhetoric, and to your point, Dana, that
the Speaker-elect, the Honorable Kevin McCarthy from California.
Madam Clerk, Whip Clark, distinguished members of the House Democratic Caucus and the House Republican Conference, it's my high honor and distinct privilege to finally be able to welcome all of you to the 118th Congress. Let me just begin by thanking my good friend, Pete Aguilar, for his very generous words of introduction and for placing my name into nomination a total of 9 times. And I also want to thank my other colleagues from the Democratic caucus for your generous words of nomination as well. Jim Clyburn, Catherine Clark, Ted Lieu, Dean Phillips, Joe Neguse, and Veronica Escobar. I also want to thank my colleagues, my friends in the House Democratic caucus for your perseverance, for your strength, for your friendship, for your unanimity of purpose, and for your unanimous support. And I simply want to say that that showing of strength is not for any one particular individual. It will be a showing of strength throughout the 118th Congress, unanimity of purpose on behalf of the American people. Before I proceed any further, let me begin by acknowledging the distinguished gentle lady from the great state of California, the iconic, the heroic, the legendary Speaker Emerita, Nancy D'Alessandro Pelosi. And without question in my mind, Speaker Emerita Pelosi will go down in history as the greatest speaker of all time. Throughout her time in Congress, she's been a legendary legislator, a fabulous facilitator, and a no-nonsense negotiator. We know that Nancy Pelosi is a woman of faith, a loving wife, a mother of 5, a grandmother of 9, a defender of democracy, a voice for the voiceless, and a powerful champion for the children, the climate, Charm City, California, the caucus, the Congress, the country, and the Constitution. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for all that you have done. It's an honor to stand on your broad shoulders. As well as the shoulders of the great Steny Hoyer and the great Jim Clyburn, 2 consequential leaders in their own right. Now, the scripture says in Galatians, let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Over the last 2 years, House Democrats, in partnership with President Biden and our colleagues in the Senate, have been hard at work on behalf of the American people, getting big things done. We passed the American Rescue Plan, saved the economy from a deep recession, put shots in arms, money in pockets, and kids back in school. We passed the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act to create millions of good-paying jobs, fix our crumbling bridges, roads, tunnels, our airports, a sewer and water system, our mass transportation systems, and ensure high-speed internet access in every single community. We passed gun safety legislation for the first time in 30 years that will save lives and make our communities safer. We passed the CHIPS and Science Act to bring domestic manufacturing jobs back home to the United States of America and ensure that our workforce has the skills to succeed in the 21st century economy, and we passed the Inflation Reduction Act to strike a dramatic blow against the climate crisis, set our planet on a sustainable trajectory forward, lower energy costs, strengthen the Affordable Care Act, lower health care costs, and drive down the high price of life-saving prescription drugs for millions of Americans. It was one of the most consequential Congresses in American history. President Biden gets the job done, and the D in Democrat stands for deliver. So over the next 2 years, over the next 2 years, as we begin this 118th Congress, let us continue to fight for lower costs. Let us continue to fight in this Congress for better paying jobs. Let us continue to fight in this Congress for safer communities. Let us continue to fight in this Congress to defend democracy. Let us continue to fight in this Congress to put and protect the public interest. Let us continue to fight in this Congress for economic opportunity in every single zip code. And let us continue to fight in this Congress for reproductive freedom. Because as Democrats, we do believe in a country for everyone. We do believe in a country for everyone, a country that provides for the poor, works for working families, makes sense for the middle class, stands up for senior citizens, innovates in the inner city, strengthens suburban communities, helps out the heartland, and revitalizes rural America. We believe in a country with liberty and justice for all, equal protection under the law, free and fair elections, and yes, we believe in a country with the peaceful transfer of power. We believe that in America, our diversity is a strength. It is not a weakness. An economic strength, a competitive strength, a cultural strength. Our diversity is a strength. It is not a weakness. We are a gorgeous mosaic of people from throughout the world. As John Lewis would sometimes remind us on this floor, we may have come over on different ships, but we're all in the same boat now. We are white, we are black, we are Latino, we are Asian, we are Native American, we are Christian, we are Jewish, we are Muslim, we are Hindu, we are religious, we are secular, we are gay, we are straight, we are young, we are older, we are women, we are men, we are citizens, we are dreamers. Out of many, we are one. That's what makes America a great country. And no matter what kind of haters are trying to divide us, we're not going to let anyone take that away from us. Not now, not ever. This is the United States of America, a land of opportunity. The fact that I'm able to stand up here today is another data point in that narrative. I was born in Brooklyn Hospital, raised in a working class neighborhood in Crown Heights, grew up in the Cornerstone Baptist Church, started off in the cradle roll department, somehow survived the violence of the crack cocaine epidemic and wound up here in the United States Congress as the highest ranking Democrat in the House of Representatives. America, truly a land of opportunity. Government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So on this first day, let us commit to the American dream, a dream that promises that if you work hard and play by the rules, you should be able to provide a comfortable living for yourself and for your family, educate your children, purchase a home, and one day retire with grace and dignity. Let us commit on this first day to lift up the American dream for every single person in this nation. Now, I recognize that this is a moment of transition. As we transition from one Congress to the next, from one majority to the next, from a year of accomplishment to a year of ambiguity, a moment of transition. The American people, understandably, after the events of this week, recognize that the Congress is at a fork in the road and are asking the question, what direction will we choose? On this first day, I do not pretend to answer that question on behalf of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, but we do extend our hand of partnership to you and want to make clear that we extend and intend to try to find common ground whenever and wherever possible on behalf of the American people. Not as Democrats, not as Republicans, not as independents, but as Americans. But I also want to make clear that we will never compromise our principles. House Democrats will always put American values over autocracy, benevolence over bigotry, the Constitution over the cult, democracy over demagogues, economic opportunity over extremism, freedom over fascism, governing over gaslighting, hopefulness over hatred, inclusion over isolation, justice over judicial overreach, knowledge over kangaroo courts, liberty over limitation, maturity over Mar-a-Lago, normalcy over negativity, opportunity over obstruction, people over politics, quality of life issues over QAnon, reason over racism, substance over slander, triumph over tyranny, understanding over ugliness, voting rights over voter suppression, working families over the well-connected, xenial over xenophobia, yes we can over you can't do it, and zealous representation over zero-sum confrontation. We will always do the right thing by the American people. So let us not grow weary of doing good, for the American people will reap the benefit of the harvest if we do not give up. God bless you, God bless the House, and God bless the United States of America.
The Democratic leader, Hakeem Jeffries, after a rousing speech, about to give the gavel to
It is now my solemn
Speaker Kevin
responsibility
McCarthy
to hand over the people's gavel to a son of Bakersfield, a former small business owner, a proud product of a firefighter's household, the gentleman from the great state of California and the next Speaker of the 118th Congress, Kevin McCarthy.
In the history of this country, Kevin Owen McCarthy, first elected in 2006, finally elected on the 15th ballot here. Let's listen in to his first speech to the country as Speaker of the House, second in line to the presidency.
That was easy, huh? I never thought we'd get up here. Thank you, Minority Leader Jeffries. Hakeem, I've got to warn you. 2 years ago, I got 100% of the vote from my conference. There's somebody else I want to thank. The gentlelady who served as our presiding officer this week, our clerk, Cheryl Johnson. Thank you. You know, my father always told me, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And now we need to finish strong for the American people. You know, if a son of a fireman and a grandchild of immigrants can rise to the highest position in the most important legislative body in our country, and if my colleague, Hakeem Jeffries, with his life story, can rise to lead his party, then opportunity and democracy still thrive in America. To Leader Jeffries, there will be times we agree, and many times we will differ. I promise our debates will be passionate, but they will never be personal. That's my commitment to you. And now, the hard work begins. What we do here today, next week, next month, next year, will set the tone for everything that follows. Tonight, I want to talk directly to the American people. As Speaker of the House, my ultimate responsibility is not to my party, my conference, or even our Congress. My responsibility, our responsibility, is to our country. 2 months ago, you voted for a new direction for our country. You embraced our commitment to America. And now we're going to keep our commitment to you. It's a commitment for an economy that's strong, where you could fill up your tank of gas and feed your family, where paychecks grow and not shrink. It's a commitment for a nation that's safe, where communities are protected, law enforcement is respected, and criminals are prosecuted. A commitment for the future that's built on freedom, where children come first and are taught to dream big. Because in America, dreams can still come true. A commitment for a government that is held accountable, where Americans get the answers they want, need, and deserve. Our system is built on checks and balances. It's time for us to be a check and provide some balance to the president's policies. There is nothing more important than making it possible for American families to live and enjoy the lives they deserve. That is why we commit to stop wasteful Washington spending, to lower the price of groceries, gas, cars, housing, and stop the rising national debt. We pledge to cut the regulatory burden, lower energy costs for families, and create good-paying jobs for workers by unleashing reliable, abundant, American-made energy. I know the night is late, but when we come back, our very first bill will repeal the funding for 87,000 new hours. You see, we believe government should be to help you, not go after you. We're going to pass bills to fix the nation's urgent challenges, from wide open southern borders to American last energy policies to woke indoctrination in our schools. We'll also address America's long-term challenges, the debt, and the rise of the Chinese Communist Party. Congress must speak with one voice on both of these issues. This is why we will end wasteful Washington spending. From now on, if a federal bureaucrat wants to spend it, they will come before us to defend it. As for the Chinese Communist Party, we will create a bipartisan select committee on China to investigate how to bring back the hundreds of thousands of jobs that went to China, and then we will win this economic competition. Now, speaking of committees, we will hold the swamp accountable. From the withdrawal of Afghanistan to the origins of COVID and to the weaponization of the FBI. Let me be very clear. We will use the power of the purse and the power of the subpoena to get the job done. This is something we should all agree upon. We will stand up and speak out for the backbone of our economy, the hard-working taxpayer. It's nighttime here in Washington. But in some ways, it's also like a new beginning, a fresh start. My friends, this chamber is now fully open for all Americans to visit. I want to give all Americans a personal invitation. You are welcome to see this body at work. No longer will the doors be closed, but the debates will be open for you to witness what happens in the People's House. From the committee rooms to this floor, we commit to pursue the truth passionately and embrace debate. No more one-sided inquiries. Competing ideas will be put to the test in public so that the best ideas win. But we also pledge to bring Congress to the people, because answers have not and will not always be found in Washington. That's why one of our very first hearings will be held on the southern border. No more ignoring a crisis of safety and sovereignty. We must secure our border. We must get America back on track. Now, on a personal note, to my family, here and at home, to Judy, Megan, Connor, Emily, my brother Mark, Monica, Zach, and yes, my mom Bert. I am where I am because you are who you are. You can stand. I'd also like to thank my constituents in California's Central Valley. Yes, and especially my hometown of Bakersfield. I don't know if you're familiar with music, but as Buck Owens sings, how many of you that sit and judge me have ever walked the streets of Bakersfield? Well, I've walked those streets my entire life. I know its people. They're hardworking and relentless, optimistic about our future. And I'm very honored to have the opportunity to represent them. I am a son of a firefighter. I saw firsthand what it means to have hard work, leadership, and service to others. It can change people's lives. And that is exactly why we are here today, to serve you, the people. We come here with the support of our families and the faith of our neighbors to be their voice in Washington. For all the wives and husbands, children and parents who are watching, a loved one to be sworn in, I knew it took a couple extra days. I'll be honest, it's not how I had it planned. I want you to remember this moment. Take it in. Your loved ones are about to make history. My colleagues and I thank you for your understanding and your sacrifice, and we will work every day to make you proud. My most favorite spot in this building is not in this chamber. It's in the chamber they met before, in Statuary Hall. It's my favorite place to take people on a tour. You see, it's where Abraham Lincoln served. He was just a one-term congressman, sat in the back. I like to go to that spot and I like to stand where he stood. I like to do it at night when people aren't around. I like to look over and look at the clock, because that's the same clock and same view that Abraham Lincoln saw. I've watched Lincoln serve in the greatest challenge to our Constitution, the Civil War. I watched him take people who were rivals and put them together. I watched in a time that he did not know if a nation could sustain itself, but he dreamt of a future and built a railroad across the nation. I want us to all take a moment one time that you are here. I want you to stand there. I want you to look. And I want you to think, if America could do it then, we can do it now one more time. You know, Abraham Lincoln gave his life in service to this country. One of his most important observations about America applies today, as much as it did 160 years ago. He said, "We are striving to maintain the government and institutions of our fathers and to transmit them to our children and our children's children's forever." My fellow Americans, that is still our mission today. This moment calls for restoring trust within our country and with each other. In that spirit, I will work with anyone and everyone who shares our passion to deliver a better future for the nation. I hope you'll join me. As a Congress, we can only operate if we cooperate. My door will be open. I'd like you to come by. I want you to see, as you walk down the hall, a large portrait of Lincoln. I want you to go into that conference room, and I want you to see another portrait. My members know of this. It's of Washington crossing the Delaware. You all know the story. It happened on Christmas, 1776. There was no iPhone to take a picture. People wonder when it was painted. It wasn't painted by someone who was there. It was painted in 1850 and 1851. He was an immigrant who lived in America, amanuensis. You know why he painted it? Because he knew America was more than a country. America was an idea. He went home to Germany, and he wanted Germany to have a revolution based upon the values and freedoms that we defend every day. His talent was art. So he believed if he painted this painting, he could inspire his countrymen to rise up for the idea of freedom. Well, many historians will tell you he didn't get it correct. They'll tell you Washington crossed on a Durham boat, but he paints it with Washington in a rowboat. You see 13 people, but only 12 faces. You see Washington standing up in a rowboat in the middle of winter, wearing a ceremonial uniform with his hand on his chest. He looks so stoic. You would look at that man, you'd say, I'd follow him anywhere. You probably believe that he never lost a battle. But history would tell us at that moment, at that time, he had only lost. We had never won. You see, that was the night of our first victory as a nation when we surprised the Hessians. But when you look at that painting, don't look at Washington. I want you to look at who's in the boat. You see, the second rower in the beret, he's Scottish. The person directly across from him in the green, rowing in the exact same cadence, is an African American. You come down right to the middle in the red, the person who's rowing the strongest is a woman. And in the very back is a Native American. I don't know from a historic fact if they were in the boat that night, but to this young immigrant who had lived in America, that's who he believed would be in the boat. The second to last person is a farmer. He could be from Bakersfield, I'm not sure. His hand goes across his face. People will debate this part. But what I see is a hand of the 13th person nobody sees. You see, what I believe Emmanuel is saying is, here we are, battling for the creation of the idea of freedom. That every individual is equal. Not a perfect nation, but striving to be a more perfect union. Having lost every battle against the greatest challenge with the strongest nation, having lost them all, but willing to do it on our holiest of nights, with a hand reached out and asking if you would join us. That's as true today as it was then. If we let everybody in the boat, if we row in the same cadence together, there is no obstacle this body can overcome for this nation. It is time for us to be the voice and worthy of their vote. Let me close with this. I may not know all of you, some of you are new, but I hope one thing is clear after this week. I never give up. I make this promise. I'll never give up for you, the American people. And I will never give up on keeping our commitment to America. Our nation is worth fighting for. Our rights are worth fighting for. Our dreams are worth fighting for. Our future is worth fighting for. Therefore, with love for this country and charity for each other, let us now take our oath and be worthy of the office on which we are about to enter. God bless everybody in this chamber, and God bless America. Not so fast, I have to get sworn in first. Sit down. I am now ready to take the oath of office. I want to ask the Dean of the House, the Honorable Hal Rogers of Kentucky, one of my first mentors, to administer the oath of the office.
First, we want to offer a bipartisan congratulations to the gentleman from California. Now, will the Speaker designate raise his right hand? Do you solemnly swear that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that you take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which you're about to enter? So help you God.
Yes, I do.
Congratulations and Godspeed.
Thank you. According to the President, the chair will swear in the members-elect en masse. The members-elect will rise. The chair will now administer the oath of the office. All members-elect will raise their right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that you take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which you are about to enter, so help you God. Congratulations. You are now members of the 118th Congress. All right, we got a little more business. I hope that was worth the wait. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from New York, Ms. Stefanik.
It is my humbled honor to be the first to address you from the floor of the People's House as Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as chair of the Republican Conference, I am directed by that conference to notify the House officially that the Republican members have selected as Majority Leader the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Steve Scalise.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Aguilar.
Mr. Speaker, as the chair of the Democratic Caucus, I have been directed to report to the House that the Democratic members have selected as Minority Leader the gentleman from New York, Mr. Hakeem Jeffries.
The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from New York, Ms. Stefanik.
Mr. Speaker, as chair of the Republican conference, I am directed by that conference to notify the House officially that the Republican members have selected as Majority Whip the gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Tom Emmer.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Aguilar.
Mr. Speaker, as chairman of the Democratic caucus, I have been directed to report to the House that the Democratic members have selected as Minority Whip the distinguished gentlewoman from Massachusetts, the Honorable Katherine Clark.
Get it all done. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from New York, Ms. Stefanik.
Mr. Speaker, I offer a privileged resolution and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Resolution 1. Resolved that Cheryl L. Johnson of the state of Louisiana be and is hereby chosen Clerk of the House of Representatives. That Catherine Spendor of the Commonwealth of Virginia be and is hereby chosen Chief Administrative Officer of the House of Representatives. And that Reverend Dr. Margaret Grun Kibben of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania be and is hereby chosen Chaplain of the House of Representatives.
The gentlewoman from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I yield to the gentleman from California, Mr. Aguilar, for the purpose of offering an amendment.
Mr. Speaker, I have an amendment to the resolution, but before offering the amendment, I request that there be a division of the question on the resolution so that we may have a separate vote on the chaplain.
The question will be divided. The question is on agreeing to that portion of the resolution providing for the election of the chaplain. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it. This portion of the resolution is agreed to, and without objection, the motion to consider is laid on the table. Now, if we could just have all votes like that. Don't blame me for hoping. The gentleman from California.
Mr. Speaker, I offer an amendment to the resolution offered by the gentlewoman from New York.
The clerk will report the amendment.
You just heard Kevin McCarthy's first speech officially now as Speaker of the House. Good evening, or should I say good early morning, everyone. I'm Laura Coates.
And I'm Dana Bash. It is early in the morning, and it is now an end to an extraordinary saga, a drama that we have seen play out for the past week. 14 defeats, and now a late night near rumble. Kevin McCarthy has that passed him, and he is now Speaker of the House.
Did you hear him say when he got up there, I never thought I would get up here? I mean, there was that moment, and you contrast that to the confidence that he exuded all day long, all week. Maybe it was sort of a feigned appearance to just kind of have a stiff upper lip. But in reality, until that moment, I think we were all thinking, will he actually become the Speaker of the House, including, of course, a brawl?
Almost a brawl. I mean, the quickness with which he was elated, and then he was defeated and deflated, and then he was angry, and then all of a sudden, they convinced at least Matt Gaetz and 4 others to change their votes to vote present, to lower the threshold so that he could actually become Speaker. And to see him run down to the well and say, hold on, we don't want to adjourn.
All the red cards coming out.
Yeah, I mean, it was truly, truly dramatic.
I mean, we talked about this being a historic once-in-a-century occurrence. I think this will go down in history for so many reasons, not the least of which the 15 rounds it took to become the Speaker of the House. The idea of all of the negotiating and the jockeying behind the scenes, but immediately it was as if of course, Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, all of whom now are congresspersons officially, longer elect, they knew where to pick up, just as McCarthy did, which is to contrast what the Democrats and the Republicans would now do going from forward.